All right, so you're on the chat?
Yep. We're recording now, yeah.
And it was Rumi? You put...
Yeah, and he says, I am here this moment inside the beauty, the gift God has given, our love. You know, and he continues on with that. But when he's writing his poetry, I start to find out after a little while that he's actually writing it from inside of that consciousness as he's in it. And you can see all the different initiations that he went through in his poetry, because he's explaining the different experiences he had and what he's experiencing at the moment. And you can see where he's at based on what we're reading. And it's like, oh, he's talking about when this happened, or, you know, and then, you know, he says, you know, we're crossing between the two worlds. Just come on over, you know, pretty much. It's like, oh my God, that's why I listen to him all. I just, he puts you there. I don't know, because he's coming from there, it seems like. And that's probably why it's so great talking to Carla. Just saying.
Oh, well, okay.
Okay.
No. Let me see what, there was something when you were talking about what you just talked about that I crossed my mind, and then I lost it when you said that. Anyway, somebody else got a comment in between. But one of the things, though, let's go back to Melissa's comment about people. There's what, how many billion people on the planet now? 8?
7 plus, yeah.
Okay. So everybody let's look at it from an astrological viewpoint for the moment. Everybody has got a little universe in their head of which they are the center. So you have basically 7.5 billion or something people walking around on this planet that are in their own universe of which they are the center. And for that, I think we do quite well as a collection of humans on this planet. And then now let's look at it from the soul level, because every soul has different collection of experiences that are its history and from where and whence it operates. And again, like I said, there are some young souls and there are some older souls. So they're not, so every one of them is unique on that level also. And so when you look at human beings, if you can factor that in, because, you know, we all kind of look the same, basically the same physical structure. We speak a language and generally speak to people who speak in the language we speak. You know, so we see a degree of uniformity and we don't see the subtle differences, where the fact that everybody's really operating here is unique in some way. But not everybody's going to the same level. In fact, they're just never going to really be ever at the same level, because the further you go, yes, you're involved in group, but you're not enforced in group, which is a difference. You get what we tried to emulate here turned out very different. In other words, the original concept of communism was communing, etc., etc., but it does not work this early. We are nowhere near down here on these early stages of life to all work together. It's just the opposite. We're here there's some specific lesson that we've got or some experience that we've got to do. We're working towards whatever it is that's the individual probably doesn't even know, but he's still driven in that direction because he's not conscious of the soul's objective and agenda. And if I don't want to dissect a circular chart at this point in time, but it has some harmony, but it all is set to a point where you're driven to evolve. You cannot come on this planet and just not go through something in this lifetime. The rhythms and the cycles and the stuff that's going to go around for everybody is, if you see people who think they got a really easy life and a good life and they don't have any problems, you don't know them. And I say that because, you know, I know people, they look exactly like that, but they have the same sets of issues and cycles everybody else does. It's just how they're handling theirs. You're not seeing it, or they don't think it's as big a deal as somebody else thinks about their cycle. But so you've just got to give everybody else the space that you're giving yourself to be who you are and to grow it's your own one. And when you can do that, first of all, it should eliminate a lot of stress out of your life, because a lot of the stress is getting pissed off at other people for this or that, or your expectations of what they should be doing. Okay. So anyway, just 2 cents there in terms of the realization that we might look relatively uniform in terms of head, couple arms, legs, torso, but that's where it ends. Then everybody's on a different time frame and in objectives. There's some, in fact, I was going to mention, because you mentioned many lives, many masters, didn't you? Yeah. And there are times when a life comes here just to relax. It's not too often, but he does make a mention, I believe, of that in that book, that sometimes somebody comes for just a rest. They just need an experience here, but they need a rest. And there aren't too many of those, but you know, they're here too. So that should, if you can kind of enlarge your world a little bit that way, psychologically, to make room for all these people to just be who they are with their limits, even if you have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis and have expectations out of them.
500 of them, Carla.
Okay. And what have you got, Tom? How many?
Sorry, I missed that. How many of what?
I thought you had people that you have expectations out of at work too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She said she's got 500.
Well, in HR, yes, you have a very, very huge responsibility. You might not directly manage all those people, right? But you have to make sure they conform to some certain way.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I work at the Census Bureau, so I have HR telling me what I have to tell my staff to do. And everybody has to do it a certain way. And working for the federal government, OPM sets certain guidelines and rules on how each job series has to function. So it's just interesting that we're talking about this, though, because as I'm listening and kind of synthesizing this, it's like everything we're talking about kind of goes against the rub and the grain of what the expectation is for me to do at work. And I don't particularly like telling people what they have to do and how they have to do it, because I believe that everybody's an individual and they're capable of figuring things out on their own, and you can get from A to Z in your own way. Just make sure you do it within the time frames given. But it's just interesting that we're talking about that, because I'm like, this is like completely against what the expectation is for us at work.
Yeah, well, I work for the state, so yeah, I got you.
So you know,
there's, yeah. So it's the same thing. Like, you need everybody, in that capacity of life, everybody needs to be on the same page with certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And in my capacity at work, I have to chase people down to to get them along, and just like, look, guys, we got to get this done. Here's the deadline. Like, or just where people are like, listen, this is how you log into this system. So it's like the little tiny things. So that's where I feel like there needs to be a separation, but at the same time there has to be an overlap. So it's figuring that part out. It's like, okay, so this function of what's happening in my life right now has, like you said, we have rules and you have deadlines and we have to bring you up to speed. But on the other end, not everybody is on that same trajectory, on that same level, on that same form of that. So it's kind of, it's not even it's not acceptance mostly. It's just trying to make it work where it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, but you have to accept that it doesn't make sense in order for it to make sense.
It's tough to,
it's
really
there's
tough.
a whole lot of contradictions happening.
Yeah, it's tough to strike that balance, right?
Oh, you're operating on a bunch of different planes.
Yes, and it's, trying not to, I don't know, just trying not to, just being able to continue going forward without other people kind of bringing you back down to that. So maybe that, just dealing with that many people, finding to make sure that you have that space that's your own versus the collective. I don't know if that, to me, that's how it is. It's just being able to know how to operate on my own plane of existence versus the everybody, and then the individuals. Like, I feel like it's just so many different levels of it that we have to manage. I don't know if is that the right word, Carla, that we have to manage or experience?
I'm wondering if and again, it's not a circumstance that I would have ever been dealing with a lot of people, but if you can at least give them some recognition that, this is not normally how they would want to do it, or so on and so forth, and give them some personal recognition, because by the same token, if it's just, you got to do it this way, and they're sitting there arguing in their head because they've had no room to be themselves, to be able to even lift up for a moment and go over here just to placate. And then they can go back to psychologically know they can still be recognized for who they are. I'm not saying that really clearly, but just that little personal touch, if you know just a little bit about that person, or some little nicety, then they know that you like them, or that you do kind of care about them, even though we have to now move over to this other space and do it because that's what the job is. I mean, that's what you get paid for.
I guess maybe, recognizing them as an individual while we're in an environment that is about conformity.
Right. And so
but I work in the judicial system, so that's, a whole lot of that is interpretation. But for, dealing with the employees, it's like, we have this level of conformity, and you do have, let's say, managers, supervisors that their job is to make sure everyone's in that conformity, but in that essence, they're forgetting to treat a person as an individual. And so that's where a lot of the headbutting happens, and then they end up in our office. But so that's what I see. So it's just trying to, I don't know, maybe just put it into perspective and trying to and again, that's where the frustration is. It's like, all right, people, I understand we're trying to get here, but don't forget about the individual, so it's a lot of that. And
Carla told me, Nancy, that millionaires don't have astrologers. Billionaires have astrologers, and they build their companies, with astrology as one of the personality profiles that to make sure people are fit, right, Carla?
Right.
That's a thing.
But you cannot do that in a government job.
Right. Yeah,
but you know what the funny thing is, we do, but this is something that becomes optional and not mandatory, using terms that I have to deal with at work, is what's required, what's mandatory versus, hey, here's something you can try out if you're interested. We've done classes where we do your Myers-Briggs profiling, and we used it as a part of a way of doing team building classes. But not everybody does, not every group does it. because not everybody cares. They just want the work to get done. They don't care how it gets done as long as it gets done. So we can't force, we call them soft skills, which I think is horrible because then it makes people think less of them. But working with an individual on not a work basis, not a skills ability basis, but as on a personal basis is looked at less than, I guess you can say, right, Tom, like less than, like we're not worried about who you are and whether or not you like to read and what you like to read. We just want to make sure you can read this policy and make sure it's taken care of. But we do have classes, and I got the most out of my career by doing that because it helped me relate to people differently. And that's like the first thing I think people, when we do those classes, that people are like, oh, everybody is different. I mean, we all know it, but it's one of those classes where we know it. So like we know things, but to actually understand and really know it. And I think that's where the struggle is with my job, because I want everybody to know it. It's not just like, know it's up there. So that's where like a lot of this is to me like, oh, I need to share this, but I don't know how to share this because everyone's gonna be like, all right, you're crazy. You know, like Donnie, I think we talked about it too. Like people look at you a little differently for a while because you're on your own plane, your own trajectory, and they're not there yet. So they're like, all right, you're out of my comfort zone, person.
Well, I think I look at myself as weird and crazy too. So there's that. So there's that whole part of it too. Like I totally get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm crazy. Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah,
used to
we're all
jump out of
crazy.
airplanes on a regular basis. So yeah, you're crazy.
Yeah, we're all crazy. Yeah, no doubt. Until we're not.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out where I'm at again. Anybody?
First, the
help
disciple
out?
becomes aware.
Okay. First, the disciple becomes aware not only of his group and allied groups, but his consciousness is expanded until it might be called planetary consciousness. Oh yes, I know what I was talking about. Initially and I'm going back to this chart again. The first two bottom levels, which do not have what's called principled matter. So in other words, it's like the playpen. It's if you have Play-Doh, you can make it and shape it into something, then you can turn around, flatten it out and make something else with it. Okay, you're having fun, you're playing, you're learning, etc., etc. The next plane is the emotional plane. It's the level number 6. And this is, to me, it's bubbles. I liken it to bubbles because you can build a castle in the air. I mean, you have energy here that you can create into whatever you want, and it can be so beautiful and a dream, because it is a dream. It's like it represents film, it represents anything that's got illusion, so on and so forth. So, and you pop the bubble and try to hold an emotion. How long can you hold an emotion for other than being really got a grudge against somebody? That one, maybe you can, but for everything else, you know, they're so fluid, they come and go. Okay, so people functioning on those two planes haven't come up to what's considered concretized. Once you get into the mental plane, you have concretized matter, and it's principled matter. It stays the same. 1 and 1 is 2. And it's going to be 1 and 1 is 2. So you get mental thoughts, you get math, you get things that are going to stick and that can be developed. And you're moving on up through all of those levels. But what happens is, here on this planet, you expect people who are functioning on these lower 2 levels, and most people are, okay, still, and you expect them to get along in a group, and they're just learning. They're just experiencing who they are, and don't necessarily have anything solid even, because life is going to change and it's going to keep growing for them. Some of it up, some of it down. So when you try to go put people in a group and make people work in a group at this level, it's by force. It's the same way that what happens with communism, if you have a government system and there's no room for anybody to be exactly who they want to be and to grow. So it becomes forced. And so the reason I'm bringing it up is because we start talking about groups here. And the point I'm making is that very early on, you're here to learn, you're here to grow, you're here to experience, you're here to jump from this to that, so on and so forth. And everybody's on a different trajectory. So if you go try to make groups and work as a group at that point, you've ultimately got to force somebody, because they're not all going to go in this direction together at that stage, because they've all got a separate agenda. But I see this happen, and it's you get a lot of bad feelings between people. It just doesn't work into something really smooth that's going to be beautiful, so on and so forth. It's not, the energy levels down there aren't going to do that. But so they talk about the the disciple becomes aware not only of his group and his allied groups, but his consciousness is expanded until it might be called planetary consciousness. As you move up, and this is the point I wanted to make, as you move up this chart, okay, and you get into the subtler realms, and then you start getting into the formless worlds, those automatically have groups. But let me go to what I was talking about to begin with, when I talked about that initial monad with that such fine veil that there's communication in all directions, no limitations. Okay. Well, we're down a little further. When we get into the middle, there's some limitations, but a lot less. So each time you move up this chart, you end up becoming more inclusive by nature, and you are involved with groups without being forced to. It's just automatic, because now you've got, let's go just less veils, if you will, less obstruction. When you're down right at the very bottom levels here, you've got a lot of obstruction going on between people. You've probably noticed that sometimes you're going to say something to somebody and you got it all worked out, and then you get in their presence and it just doesn't come out. Okay, because there's something just in the physical dynamics of them physically both being present, and maybe some emotional stuff, but the words just don't come out. What you were going to say never gets said, or it gets said in a different way. And as you move up that chart and you have less of that physical matter and that kind of, that's not there to obstruct, then these energies are getting along. And when you move into the triad, which is level 4 and level 3, a little bit of maybe level 5, and you get the ashrams that he talks about, they're working without all of that obstructing stuff. You're automatically in this group, and it's not a problem like it's a forced problem at the levels you guys are working now. Just like, okay, well, I got this group, you guys gotta be able to do this. This is a job. You're all different, but at this point in time, you all have to act uniformly. Okay, that's a forced deal. If you were in another country that had a different government system than we have now, there would probably be a real force put upon these people if they didn't do it right. Because there's more enforcement, because it's just not natural. the people you are working with every day, I mean, you don't know what happened to them at home. You don't know, you got all this other agenda that's going on in their life. I mean, they could have a brother or sister that just ended up in jail. They could, the wife is going to have a baby and you don't know if she's going to have it in the next two days or 3 days, and you're not really interested in whatever's going on at work. And in other words, so when he talks about groups, the only point I want to make is you make them too far down and you try to force them to work. That's what happened with the Theosophical Society. It happens with every one of these groups. And it certainly happens in other groups elsewhere, is because everybody's got their own work and agenda and goals when we're down in these lower realms before we start moving up. And you carry it with you. It lives with you all the time. Not everybody can push it out of the way. So all I'm saying is it's still a dream that I think is not even practical, because the job here when you're living in these two lower worlds is to get your way up there, and you've got to work your way up by experiences and learning, either learning easy or learning the hard way, whichever it takes to accomplish the goals set by that soul for that incarnation. So as you get upward, then automatically, in fact, when I think one of the things I think about is my mentor and the Physics of Consciousness. There's a book that I recommend, Physics of Consciousness. And the man who wrote that book tells part of his story in the book, along with the Physics of Consciousness. And I have the book of my mentor. It came to me when she was gone, and she'd written notes in there. So the very major initiation happened for both of them, and the dates in her book for this event and the dates that he wrote in his book, and they didn't know each other. He lives on one side of here on the East Coast. She lived on the West Coast. Their paths would have never crossed. Okay. But they both basically had that experience at about the same time. And that's the grouping that I see as something that occurs, because in other words, they're functioning on these upper levels and they accomplish it at the same time. And there's may well be a group that's moving through at that point in time, but their paths will never cross physically in real life, or most likely won't. But that was a group, but it was the group that were ready at that point in time and went through something at the same time, because there's a certain amount of momentum. He'll talk about that in Rays and Initiations, that, in fact, there's certain of those initiations when they're higher up can only be taken at certain times. Because it's either I think when you jettison out of here, I think he indicates there's only certain times when the other systems are all in place to even allow that to happen. In other words, because we're Sirius, the planet, you're going to see the planet Sirius spoken of a lot in these books. And there's other systems out there that interact with us that, and they would probably all have to be in the right formation for something to even be able to leave this system and go wherever it's supposed to go. There's certain timings. So anyway, that's kind of haphazard the way I said that, but I hope the point kind of got through that we start to function with groups, but that we're not necessarily conscious of them, their physical existence when. Okay, secondly, he begins to merge that planetary awareness into something synthetic, still, gradually develops the consciousness of the greater life, which includes the planetary life, as man includes in his physical expression such living organisms as a heart or a brain. And that's where I think he indicates somewhere that the goal is to be a fully conscious unit in the planet. It's mentioned in one of his books somewhere. So when they talk about gradually developing the consciousness of the greater life, which includes the planetary life, as man includes in his physical expression such living organisms as his heart or brain, you know, we're supposed to be some little unit in the planet also. When this takes place, he begins to comprehend the significance of spirit, the one life back of all forms, the central energy, which is the cause of all manifestations. And then we're looking up, spirit, I think, is level 2. And when we talk, A.A.B basically talks about that and how we're, that energy is energy we use. So the one life behind it all, the central energy, which is the cause of all manifestations. The first reaction of the average student on reading the above is to think immediately of the body nature as it expresses some type or other of energy. Thus, the duality is the thing noted, and that which employs the thing is present in his mind. Yet, one of the main necessities before occult aspirants at this time is to endeavor to think of the one reality, which is energy itself and nothing else. And this goes back to everything is energy. Science has certainly, and the quantum and that certainly has started to deal with that. When in the book Twin Dimensions, he makes it's very apparent that our eye reads light and decodes it and gives us what we're seeing in front of us. Okay, so we are creatures who read light. That is what we do. So that's where he says it's time to endeavor to think in terms of the one reality, which is energy itself and nothing else, because it all boils down to energy. Therefore, it is of value to emphasize in our discussion of this abstruse subject the fact that spirit and energy are synonymous terms and are interchangeable. Only in the realization of this can we arrive at the reconciliation of science and religion and at a true understanding of the world of active phenomena by which we are survived and in which we move. And the book to describe that one is The Physics of Consciousness, but it's not an easy book. But probably better than any other thing. It describes how our physical body is the mechanism. It's a piece of machinery meant to create consciousness, and how it does it within our body and the systems that are used. So, but again, there's a lot of science in it, and it's not the first place you would go looking for something. The terms organic and inorganic are largely responsible for much of the confusion and the sharp differentiation existing in the minds of many people between body and spirit, life and form, and have led to a refusal to admit the essential identity in nature of these two. The world in which we live is regarded by the majority as really solid and tangible, yet possessing some mysterious power lying concealed within it, which produces movement, activity, and change. This is, of course, putting it crudely, but it suffices to sum up the unintelligent attitude. The orthodox scientist is largely occupied with structures and relationships, with the composition of forms, and with the activity produced by the component form parts and their interrelations and dependencies. The chemical and elements and the functions and the parts they play and their mutual interactions as them compose all forms in all kingdoms of nature are the subject of their investigation. the nature of the atom, of the molecule and the cell, their functions, the qualities of their force manifestations, and the varying types of activity, the solving of the problem as to the character and natures of energies, focalized or localized in differing forms of nature or material world, demand consideration of the ablest minds in the world of thought. Yet, the question, what is life, or what is energy, or what is the process of becoming and the nature of being, remains unanswered. So in other words, they're really involved with the minutia and the phenomena, but not the essence. The problem as to the why and the wherefore is regardless as fruitless and speculative and almost insoluble. Nevertheless, through pure reason and through correct functioning of the intuition, these problems can be solved and the questions answered. The solution is one of the ordinary revelations and attainments of initiation. The only true biologists are initiates of the mysteries, for they have an understanding of life and its purpose, and are so identified with the life principle that they think and speak in terms of energy and its effects. And all their activities in connection with the work of the planetary hierarchy are based on a few fundamental formulas which concern life, as it makes itself through its three differentiations or aspects: energy, force, and matter. Take a breather. Anybody got a comment on that section? There was a lot in there. Or I can give you the next paragraph and then maybe you'll be able to comment. Should be noted here that only as a man understands himself can he arrive at an understanding of that which is the sum total we call God. This is a truism and occult platitude, but when acted upon leads to a revelation which makes the present unknown God a recognized reality. And let me illustrate. Man knows himself to be a living being and calls death that mysterious process wherein something which he commonly designates as the breath of life is withdrawn. On its withdrawal, the form disintegrates. The cohesive, vitalizing force is gone, and this produces a falling apart into its essential elements of that which has hitherto been regarded as the body. This life principle, this basic essential of being, and this mysterious elusive factor is the correspondence in man of that which we call spirit or life in the macrocosm. Just as the life in a man holds together, animates, vitalizes, and drives into activity the form, and so makes him a living being, so the life of God, as the Christians call it, performs the same purpose in the universe and produces that coherent, living, vital ensemble which we call a solar system. Well, there's plenty of material there, huh? And in this chart, and if you were reading Annie Besant's book, the consciousness one, the monads at the top, and then you get a reflection of that coming down, and it's a reflection of a reflection all the way down, and that's why they end up saying that you can understand, if you can understand yourself, or if you can understand God and then would understand yourself, I don't care which direction you want to go from, that's why they're synonymous, so to speak, in as much as we don't function normally on that very top level. Where our awareness comes up to level number 2 for the most part. That's number 6, and then they start kicking you out, getting ready for you to leave, because there's no more room. You've done your thing. You've served your purpose. You'll be here long enough anyway, so you will have served your purpose at that point, I guess.
Carla, what I'm getting, like when I start at the paragraph that starts with the orthodox scientist, I guess, that becomes in the whole, and I know we talked about this the first time, it was like science versus religion, as opposed to like the interconnectivity of the two. So when you're talking about like, why are we here? What is our purpose? All that, it depends. Like, instead of thinking of the two married, you're thinking as either one school of thought or the other. So one focuses maybe solely on the tangible and what can be fact, versus maybe like a belief system of knowing. So,
Right.
you know, being able to marry the knowingness versus, you know, an atom is made up of this, and, you know, chemical equations equal that. So there's very much like a physical tangibleness of this versus the intangible was just the knowing of. So I think I'm seeing that how if we're able to marry the two, it'll help us just like continue to move up through those, and you know,
Right.
initiates, like move through that.
Yeah, what's driving, what's the
Yeah.
real driver underneath? In other words, because we deal for the most part with phenomena, signal and noise. Noise is consciousness. Signal is the will, which is the energy of that primary on top. So, and for most part, I mean, the scientists are digging into phenomena, trying to take the phenomena apart to figure out what it is or how it's designed or whatever. Okay. But he's saying, by the same token, you're not asking what life is, which the phenomena is a result of on a temporary basis for whatever purpose, whether it's a tree that's going to be around here for a long time, it's still phenomena because it's energy that is creating it. And then if we got technical on this planet, the energy pattern is there. There's a Deva evolution that comes in and fills in the blanks to make this beautiful tree for us. Okay. And flowers and, well, form. It fills in the form. It's and he makes it clear when he talks about it, more of it in Cosmic Fire, because he deals with those things in that book, that it's got its own evolutionary pattern. It is not, we're not meant to really interact with them other than them doing the job. Some people like to, you know, I mean, yeah, the Devas, they fill in the form. It would be like when this planet, when the plans were getting ready to put this planet together, if you will, the entity, the deity, whatever you want to call it, that is the reason this planet's going to come together, because it's their will, their purpose. He's going to call in, just like if you're building a house, you're going to call in the builders. You know, you're going to call in the guys who are going to frame it, and somebody else is going to paint it. Well, in his case, when it was filling in the forms, then it makes mention somewhere in here that this was an evolution that the being who put this planet desired to put this planet together. No, so he calls them in because he's going to need all these pieces to make this thing happen. And so the Deva evolution fills in the forms on the scaffolding. Our scaffolding is light. It's the etheric body. It is made of light. And then I assume that that Deva evolution reads the code and fills it in, so to speak. And so we get the form and we get the colors, we get the beauty, we get whatever. Although our capacity to see the colors has advanced. That's one of the things that in cosmic consciousness he talks about. I think at Aristotle's time, we could only see 4 colors. Now we see 7. Plus there's a lot of etheric vision now in terms of colors and auras and so on and so forth. More of that is surfacing. There's people around who do that easily.
How come? Never mind. Nope. I'm saving that for another time. You ain't getting that one out of me. Nope. Forget it.
Yeah, right. All right. So what was that you were saying? Well, you're going to turn on the TV and then you put your heads right there so you can talk.
Let's go. Let's keep going.
All right. Did that, Melissa, did that make any, address any of that?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
There's
Now
a,
you-
well, there's astral vision, but we don't. It's not for us right now, right? Is that right?
I don't think so. I mean, it's really not been a topic of much material that I've ever seen, if so, at this point in time. I mean, we've just really are dealing with the physical, and we're just really starting to build out the astral, literally. And we're only up on average. Lower mental is the bottom 4 planes, so that we're starting. And so we're moving from what's called kama manasic. In other words, we are moving into the mental plane and dragging some of our emotional stuff with it. So most mental thoughts are not pure mental thoughts. They're mental combined with emotion.
Mm. Mhm.
And I imagine emotion is the driver that gets them to want to go out there and express, even in terms of, because the emotion is the unresolved issue that's being presented when the common monastic thoughts are being presented. Is, there's something driving underneath there. You say something, but you got another trigger somewhere else that you're looking to be.
That's why it makes it so hard to talk to people a lot of times, right?
I thought, oh, I shouldn't say that because I don't really mean it that way, but there's 2 guys in here, and I was going to say that's why it's so hard to talk to one's wife, because they've got hidden agendas coming at you. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you don't think I don't know that?
Yeah, but it's even stranger, because if we're not, like, say Melissa, say all of us are just thinking purely mental, but you've got these a-holes. Oh wait, did I say that? I mean, you got people bringing emotion into it. You're really susceptible to getting played pretty hard. Right?
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah.
why do you think they brought something up in the first place?
So we got to be careful and kind of be watching that emotional, place that people come from, I guess, to run it through our system. See if there's any validity to what they're saying.
Yeah, well, and the thing about it is probably all humans on this planet do that at this point in time. If you're talking about coming from pure mental, then you might as well be spewing out a formula.
Right. There's not pure mental then down here.
Well, I don't think we're entertaining much of it yet. I mean, I suppose you get, what do you get? You get criticisms of people who are real scientific, who are real mental, who just don't even relate to what most people are going through, or a lot of the world, or whatever. That would be somebody probably right up there. But by the same token, he will say very clearly that you can have somebody up in those heavy duty abstract levels, and they don't even have a clue about the soul or any of that. So that moving up that mental plane doesn't mean that you're gonna be running that track over there to that soul. In fact, that's what building the antakarana, that's what building that line of light that you drive to make that bridge. You've sometimes maybe heard Rainbow Bridge, if anybody's looking around, that is considered the Anticorona too. Or at least I think it's an interchangeable name with it. But what happens is people get a little bit of this experience, and they get a little bit of what's going on. They jump a level, they have some experience. It's great phenomena, and they are going to want to share it, or they're going to want to tell everybody else. So then whatever little picture of the piece of the puzzle they have, they want to go out and share it, but they've got to share it from whatever their level is, not from a more advanced level, because they aren't there yet. And they're going to color it with who they are, and their personality and all of that. It's going to be synthesized through that. So it's not, and then they go out and then they market it or share it or do whatever, and throw a lot of other stuff around along with it necessarily, and pretty soon you've got a lot of mishmash too. Because how are they going to keep pumping that when that's where they're at, that's what it is. That's so where do you go from there? If you're marketing something, you just got to keep making it look more phenomenal or something to keep it of interest in this world, right? So yeah, this stuff for me is straight. It's, you do this, you work on it. If you do accomplish something, if you're smart, you let the accomplishment go, because if you hold on to it, it holds you in place, and you're not going farther, because you just put a stop on it, or a block, or however you want to put it. But you're not free to go on as long as you're holding on to that. So, and most people, if something like that happens, they hold on to it. It's on the lower levels, it's their claim to fame. So, but I think I would expect everybody's experiences as they move up that plane to be different, because each individual is unique. Each individual has the collection of who they are, their past history, all of that, and that's what's working through the process. It's not somebody else's. There might be some degrees of uniformity in some of the experience that is innate in the experience, but the way they go through it, and then the way they give feedback out, is to some extent their own. How can it not be? Because it's not a cookie cutter scenario here. So again,
that's 7 million different stories.
Yeah. And so you do see so-and-so is doing this way, and so-and-so is doing that way. And he will talk in these books about the Kundalini, and it does rise at certain points in time, and you shouldn't be fooling around with it. It's going to rise when it's the correct time for it to do that in the cycle of wherever you are in whatever stage of your cycle. And I remember, because I had a client who was, it was astrological client, and I can usually see in a chart when something like that might be inclined to happen. And for this individual, he really had a double whammy of potential show up astrologically. So I wasn't surprised when he was saying that somehow they've got some kind of machine that's supposed to measure this now, that kind of energy. And he was kind of going off the charts on whatever that machine was, and the phenomena that they were recording. And so, but he wasn't doing the spiritual development to go with it. in terms of he didn't have the training. That's the unfortunate part. Yeah, I can see the potential there a lot of times in the chart and the timing of when it's inclined to happen. But if you don't have the spiritual training, it doesn't mean that you're going to have an advancement that could have been a potential had you been trained, you know, and had some of that background in. So they were trying to force it somehow. Whoever was doing the measurements must have had some kind of equipment to try to force the raising of it, which he said was very painful for starters, but should never happen. Because if you're not having the rest of the experience intuitively, and to do that, it's your own body chemistry that has to be making this at that point. It's a relation, I think, between the pineal and the pituitary gland. So you don't need drugs or anything like that. In fact, you need to stay away from all that, keep your body clean, because your body's going to manufacture the chemistry needed for that. And so if you start throwing in other stuff, then you're just throwing it out of sync and isn't going to happen right anyway. So, you know, there's a lot of people who in those lower two levels, which where our astral plane is where most people are right now. Yes, you can throw a lot of different chemistry in there and have a lot of different experiences, but they don't have anything to do with this actual pathway. Maybe they can break you out to a point where you realize, well, it's not, everything is just in this narrow framework you thought. But so what? You know, do you need to know that? All of this is gonna build and develop if you follow something that's clean, that's been tried. I mean, this pathway's been tried before, so it's for eons of time. It's been built. In fact, I don't know if I can find this, but in the last year, I don't know if it was the collider or what that over in Davos or something to that effect. Oh, maybe I'm probably not going to be able to find the page. We took, maybe you guys can help me. I don't, if you remember. In other words, there was we did some science experience, and I thought maybe it was in Europe with the collider, and they said this hadn't been done in 18 million years. Anybody except me hear that? Somewhere within the last year.
It sounds familiar. I didn't think you were right. I
the
think it had
collider,
something to do with the collider. Yeah.
Like
Well, oh, I know where it is.
division of molecules or something like that.
Something like
molecular energy.
something
Big
like
Bang?
that. But
I
Big Bang?
vaguely, what's that, Donnie?
Big Bang stuff or something?
no, I don't think it was the Big Bang.
No, it's like a machine that
Well,
they
you
have.
said 18 million years. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 18 million years. And I know where I read it, but I
Self-conscious, wasn't it?
no, well, no, it has to do with an initiation, but a planetary initiation that is mentioned in this book. I think it's in Cosmic Fire, and I'm not probably going to find it. I was looking at it earlier today because I happened to see it, and then but anyway,
I Googled real quick, and it said something about ghost particles were found in a collider. I don't know if that's what it was.
okay, but it was the 18 million years that I
Okay.
saw, and the rod of power. And this could maybe not have anything to do with it other than the 18 million years, but there is there are certain rods of power that are used for the planet, not on us, I don't think. They'd be too powerful. And the second one was the flaming diamond, and it had touched in to this planet 18 million years ago. So I just thought it was interesting that this collider, which was going to do some great phenomenal type of energy release or stimulation or whatever, that they had to work that collider up to get to this point, they hadn't recorded something like that on this planet in 18 million years. So anyway, that was just a side piece of whatever, but if you see it again, something to that effect. And it's the second ray rod for initiation. So anyway, it was, because I was thinking, oh, you know, they're messing around with something here that 18 million years ago. Do we want that again? Or we should be fooling with that or whatever, you know. We don't know what the ultimate response will be. There'll be some response
gosh.
somewhere.
I wouldn't want humans messing with that stuff.
Let's put it this way, that might be a great reset we don't know about.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Right.
Opening
The other great reset is just a distractor.
right? Yeah.
They said they were going to open some portal at CERN.
Well, that might have been it. Oh, I dropped my- Anyway, that was off topic, but so anyway, on this, as far as this, the orthodontic scientists are really just looking at the phenomena. They're not looking at the source. I think he made a point of that. They're looking at all the details of the product on the end. We're at the end of that line, if you will. You know, it's the energy's been there. It's been allocated to particular forms and so on and so forth. They're looking at trying to take the form apart. They're not looking to see where the energy came from and how it got created into that form. So they're looking backwards, you know. Reverse engineering, I think, is what they call it, isn't it? Yeah, they got to go back and figure out from the pieces what is what. So am I, nevertheless, through pure reason, through the correct functioning of the intuition, these problems can be solved. Questions are answered. Their solution is one of the ordinary revelations and attainments of initiation. The only true biologists are initiates of the mysteries, for they have an understanding of life and its purpose and are so identified with the life principle that they think and speak in terms of energy, its effects. I know I read this, but all their activities in connection with the work of the planetary hierarchy are based on few fundamental formulas which concern life as it makes itself felt in three differentiations or aspects. So Annie Besant and one of the other members of the Theosophical Society, and they took a lot of years. It was a long, long time. They went through all of the elements on the planet. That's probably part of why it took so long. They physically had to get some of the element. Then etherically, with their etheric sight, they went in and determined the structure of each of those elements, its atomic number, and whatever else is, if there's anything else related to it, all before the electron microscopes did that. And they were accurate. Their atomic weights were all accurate. And the designs are not, because I remember a scientist who was talking to me, I don't know, 30 years ago or something, was saying, you know, I don't believe that all the atom is circular, that all of those atoms are circular and they're perfect circles. And in their book, and I believe it's called Occult Chemistry, by Annie Besant, then they'll show the shape of a particular atom, and they're not all circular like we have them set up. And so anyway, in fact, it was shortly after she finished that, when they finished that then she passed over and was finished for this round. But they could see that. And she also has some other books, because they had quite a bit of etheric vision, and shows the music coming out of a church out into the air in terms of the aura of the sounds and the vibrations and various things like that they put out. And those, I think a lot of those are probably on archive.org for a download, because they're still available. For people who want some of the original books in book form, A.A.B. Books has probably got one of the better collections of, because most of those books are used. And Amazon actually owns them now, but I don't think it originally did. Anyway, that's where you're going to find most of those books of the older stuff.
Amazon owns everything now.
Yeah, well, they bought that quite a while back now, but that would have been, and it's easier for them to put their used books over there also because they're not going to get the, they don't fit oftentimes well in the stack of books that Amazon has on Amazon, because they're not all perfect used books and so on and so forth. So that way it kind of gets them out from underneath that umbrella of having to backtrack, because Amazon has some fairly decent requirements for vendors that, like, for example, the other one doesn't have, is it eBay or something? They've got different standards for what you can put on there. So, and with these initiations comes a lot of that information. That's a lot of what you get. And something we have not gone into is the senses. We have 5. That's how we get information in. That's how we process. But each of those senses has 5 levels of development. So, and those tag to some extent, not straight across the board to the initiations, but it opens up the different levels of, because a lot of the information you can get is nonverbal. Everybody's functioning with some degree of nonverbal information, but it's accurate information. Somebody might say, how do you know that? Well, I just know it. Might be an answer early on. Later, you'll just say, well, I saw it. Etherically, I saw that, etc., etc. Whatever. Depends who you're talking to. And depends what's your vision, how you see things. You see them on different levels. Just like, and you would find too that if you were going to some of Blavatsky's work and so on and so forth, she will talk about the voice of the silence and the voice of the army of the voice. And in other words, these are the different levels of sound that you hear. And I don't think the army of the voice sometimes is probably audible to some level, but it's not, unless you've developed that level of hearing, it's not audible to anybody else, but you would read it. And then there's the voice of the silence. As you move up in the initiatory realm, then the recognition of the vibration of what's going on those planes is different. And that's what, for her information, there's the voice of the army, the voice of the silence, and so on and so forth. But those are just different levels of recognition that that sense is going to be able to pick up when it's developing on the level that audibility is functioning. So, and with all of that, you just get more information. So I know the mentor that I had was very psychic, and she was in a astrology class because some friends had brought her there, and this was a new school, and the teacher was trying to teach. And so we would be looking at things on the board, and she'd say, okay, when you have this and this, what does that represent? And Wendy would pipe up and say something, and she was correct, but she's psychic. And so the teacher said, okay, now show me exactly where you saw those, and explain the logic in it, because she knew she wasn't learning what we were supposed to be learning, to be able to read these things, because you're seeing two different symbols and you're mentally actively synthesizing these two, because she'd already had the answer. And, so it drove the teacher mad, just pissed her off. Anyway, so, but the point is she has all that information access to her, just right straight into her brain. When you're talking about somebody we didn't know, but because we were doing a chart of somebody we didn't know, but she still knows, because that information is there. So, and so, and different people are developing these on different times in the incarnations. They might be dealing with hearing and some extrasensory hearing in a given lifetime. That doesn't mean they have it the next time, but they've worked on it and they've got something. Now they're focusing on something else. So there's so many degrees of variables that with people, we just have to give them room to be. And just like we have our charts, we have our little agenda and we're not getting off it. We're with it for the rest of this lifetime. So is everybody else. So there should be a little compassion born here for the big picture and all the people in it. So we're probably running close to time. A little conversation maybe, and then wind it up.
Sounds good to me.
How is Melinda, how was your Christmas and stuff, and how's your spiritual journey going? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Christmas was good. Spiritual journey is, I have a problem with cruelty. For me, having compassion for people that are cruel, it's not there. I don't know. I've been struggling with that. People that are just cruel, or they can't even see, I don't know. I don't know why, but that just struck a chord with me. I'm feeling a little emotional about that. I want to be compassionate, but
right.
I don't have that.
I get it. Yeah, I get that.
Well,
I don't know
but
why
when
that just upset me a lot.
yeah. But I'm not necessarily saying that one should put up with all that, but I'm just saying in general, you got to make room for people on the planet.
Absolutely.
And yeah, there's stuff that's not.
But I find that a lot
right.
more people, it's hard, I don't know. I find more people are, I don't know how to explain it.
I'm probably under a lot of pressure right now, a lot of people.
I don't know how to explain it.
Today's the solstice, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Is it today?
Solstice.
Today's the
Yeah,
spring
solstice.
Equal days.
Yeah.
This is called equal time. day and night. For one day, they get to have equal time.
Oh, is that right? Well, tomorrow, well,
Mhm.
it's gonna start getting beautiful here. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's summer solstice. For
This
us.
is it's the
Spring equinox.
Ostara, yeah, the equinox, yeah,
Astara. Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what, yeah.
It's okay. It's is it today or is it one more
I
day?
think it's March
It's-
20th.
It's usually between the 20th and the 22nd.
Yeah, you have like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, it really
Don't put
depends on the
solstice, put
cycle of
it's
the year.
the equinox. The
Equinox,
next
not
solstice is
the-
in June. Yeah, the next
Yeah.
solstice is June.
Midsummer Night's Eve is the summer
So
solstice.
yeah,
So
yeah, I think it's. Hold on.
Man, that's a
Oh
really
no,
weird.
it's today. You're right, Dawn. It's today, 11:33 a.m.
Hmm.
So we just hit it a little while ago.
Or got hit by it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
bit of
yep.
both.
11:33 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, I am excited about that. I'll tell you that. I'm excited about just having more time outside to get things done too, you know, all
Yeah.
that. You know, all of
Oh.
it.
Summertime's when I hide.
Hey,
I
so Melinda, you're working, you're dealing with with emotions.
Which
Is
is,
that right?
listen, normally I'm not like, I don't know why that just like, I'm not normally like that. For some reason, I just got really upset. Maybe it's just because I've been dealing with so much people's crap. Like I don't deal with like office full of people. Everywhere I go, as soon as someone finds out like that I'm vegan or like anything, it's like a whole, like, I don't even know how to explain
They
it.
challenge
Everyone
It's-
has an
They
opinion, right?
challenge you.
Dude, seriously. And I'm like, I didn't bring it up. You brought it up. You're nitpicking every single thing about me right now. Like, and then or yeah, and then they just want to give you shit about it, basically. And it's like, you do realize, like, I'm choosing a path that's less painful and suffering and like all these things, and you're pissed off about it because somehow, like, I feel like you feel guilty about whatever it is you're doing, and you're putting that shit on me. Like,
Right.
but that's like dealing with people like that who get like, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, you don't see the cruelty in some of the shit you're doing. Like, I'm not trying to judge you. Like, you have to do your shit, but like, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to have compassion for people that like purposely, I think too, like Carla, like with my mom, like she is something else. Like,
have you looked
Oh,
at your
God.
transits lately?
huh?
Have you looked at your transits lately?
I know. That's why I'm like,
No, I mean, you might see that something is being triggered.
yeah. She just like, I mean, again, I love her, but I'm like, why? Why? Like, I don't know. But that for me, like my compassion, it just only goes so far. Like I don't, for a lot of, and I know like a lot of people are just like culturally, like that's their thing, or that's just like, but I think a lot of it is just like you are not capable of change. Like you think like you somehow justified to yourself, like it's okay to be cruel, and not just to animals, to children, to the elderly, to like somehow, like, I don't know. I just can't. Like
Oh, I
it
get
makes,
it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, like, I don't know, like grown men, when it like when I see grown men like going at it, or like gangsters killing each other, I'm like,
Hmm.
have at it. Like, I don't care. But like, I don't know, when I start like, when it's like that, those other realms, like animals and children and like people that can't, or any kind of creature that can't really defend itself, like, it makes me hot. Like, and I just, my compassion literally goes to zero. Like, I just don't even like whatever. Like,
Yeah, I usually use the term compassion for very large groups of people. In other
Yeah.
words, and not necessarily individual circumstance. I don't think of the word compassion. It's a collective, it's a term for the collective more than on individual cases. You know, it's like compassion in general for, I mean,
Yeah,
humanity.
like
in
I
general.
have it.
No,
I
but
have
I'm
it.
just
I
saying,
want
I
to put
don't,
it out there, but like,
yeah, but I'm not necessarily including in there, will have compassion for humanity. Yes. Have compassion for somebody who uses an axe and chops somebody's head off. I'm not saying that.
oh, that's what I'm saying, because I don't have that.
Yeah.
I'm
But-
staying on the lower levels if that's the issue, if that's the situation.
Yeah, but compassion is generally a collective term that when you get a scope of a something in a larger group or collection, you usually don't get compassion until you're moved up a ways anyway, period. It isn't even a terminology that falls into the categories down below. It just isn't, because everything is, you're looking at things more minutely down here and not from afar, so to speak, is the way I view the word. But
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Mm.
How was your Christmas, Donnie?
Well, it was great. We just moved into a new house, and I really haven't even gone out and meditated out in my yard yet. So I've just been trying to get it. I have, but I haven't. Don't give me crap, Tom. I was out. I meditate.
I'm not.
I do my meditating, but I haven't gone out and meditated by the cows or anything. Like, I got a big
Donnie,
farm
please.
behind me and stuff. I haven't set anything up.
You know,
know,
I'm
but
an
it-
advocate of active meditation too. So
Right,
if you're
I
out there
haven't-
doing
I don't have
yard
that.
work, enjoying the
Right.
flowers, dude, that's meditation. It's all about the state of mind.
You're right. No, I know Carla doesn't even meditate, which blew me away because I figured she would be yelling at me to meditate all the time, but she doesn't at all.
She knows I do enough of that for you.
I can't sit still, so I mean that just defeats the whole purpose. I just can't. I never have been able to sit still, so
You
I'm
do walking
always
meditation.
moving.
Yeah. Active
Do a walking
meditation.
meditation.
Oh, I do. I mean, I try to listen to
Sure.
Carla and just stay in a meditative state all day. I try as best as I can. But I was going to say, I'm starting to see the emotions fall away, which
Yeah.
is just wild. It's so pleasant. And it's not anything. There's nothing there, but it's not coming up. The thoughts of compassion or whether or not somebody's cruel, I'm just not even looking at it like that. And I'm not getting wound up anymore. You could probably scare me, I think, still. I said that the other day, but the emotions are just becoming level. I don't know. It's really good. It's a beneficial thing. Carla's got to be laughing because it's just falling off, though. I don't get worked up. That my roof could cave in on top of me right now, and
My husband's like that without meditating. I don't know
Yeah.
how he does. I think he's just had so much practice at work that like he just
oh, he's law enforcement, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
everything just slides off him. And to be fair, being around him has made me a calmer, like I deal with stuff a lot better than when I was younger. And
Yeah, but is he thinking about his next response?
huh?
Is he thinking about his next response because he's so good at it, or is he just rolling with the whole thing?
It just roll like it just
That's good. See, that's where it's going, I think.
it
Yeah.
just comes like he doesn't. Yeah, no. He's not pre-planning or thinking about like even I guess like a good way to explain it is like when we're training, like doing jujitsu, like he'll just come up with like if he's in a bad spot, like his body and his like it just comes up with what needs to be done. And so like he'll make up a movement without even realizing, and he'll stop and go, oh, that was really good. Let me break that down again, because I'm not even sure like what I just did. And I'm like, dude, you were really like, you just, but like it's the same like at work or, you know, just in general, he's like that. Like he just, I don't know. And he never, I've probably seen him get angry like not even a handful of times, like really angry, maybe 3 times. And
Good.
it like the scary, probably the 3 scariest times in my life, but still like he just doesn't, it doesn't, yeah. Yeah. And it's usually if like I remember one time it was because of some children, like that the children were being hurt or like mistreated, and like he got so angry. I was like, holy cow. Yeah. But yeah, most of the time, like he's such a like cool as a cucumber all the time.
I feel like that's the way this goes.
Yeah.
Because I used to get hot.
That's, yeah. I still do like sometimes, but not, yeah. And again, I think just being influenced by him and like that really helps, but yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, meditation like definitely helps. And like, and then too, like for me, trying not to be around too many people all the time, like large groups of people, like there a lot of times I just feel like that energy is just too much for me. Like I just get like, if I can just be like in nature or just with my family or like, but a lot of times if I get around like too large of a group of people, I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Like it's just too much. Their vibration or whatever it is, like I'm like, I got to go.
Listen, I used to get like that a lot more than I do now. Like now I'm very conscious of it, so I completely try to avoid as many of those situations as possible.
Yeah.
But it's even like for me, it started years ago, like food shopping. Like if there were too many people there, or if the aisles were too narrow or too high, and I'm like, nope, gotta get out. Something's not right. I can't be here. So you just kind of learn to see what works for you, or the people you have to, and then it becomes like you start to, other people's energy is just not good for you, and
Yeah.
you
I
just
think too,
avoid
like
them.
if I know I'm walking into that situation, I can kind of throw up a shield, right? Like you're ready for it or whatever. But sometimes it's just like, oh, this is happening. This sucks.
That's why my daughter doesn't play soccer, because I can't handle the soccer moms in my town.
I completely understand.
Okay.
I am with you. When William was in like a brick and mortar school, dude, those moms and the teachers in that county, in that area, like, like
yeah, and but that, and again, that goes along to just like where you're at with all of this and where other people are at, and then it's just sometimes it's hard to be able to relate to them.
I'm walking around with 3 heads, so I get it. Like I've got 3 heads. It's weird. You're not used to it. Like, yeah.
And and then sometimes, like when you're saying people like questioning you or you feeling attacked by others, it's just you're challenging their way of thought, and they don't like that.
Absolutely.
So they're not there, and you're outside their comfort zone, and so they're mad at you because you're making them question themselves instead of, it's just the truth of it. People don't like, some people are not in a place to be challenged. They're comfortable. They're like, good, let me just stay here. And because they don't understand maybe your reasons, maybe they are truly curious. So you'll have those who maybe be nicer about it.
Oh no, for sure.
And then you have people like, how could you not like hamburgers? What
about bacon? It's like, really?
Well, they just want to put you on the scale of
thing that you
nuts.
could possibly come up with to say to me, like,
right?
Yeah.
So you're a vegan?
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that.
I'm
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, a lot of
I did that last year. I was a vegetarian.
Aren't you Asian? Aren't you Southern? Aren't you this, that? And I'm like, okay, I am. I happen to be half Asian. I do happen to be somewhat Southern. I'm also a part Yankee and a girl and all these. I'm like, what does that have to do with me like paying someone else to be extremely cruel to other living creatures. Like nothing. It has nothing to do with that. Like
Right. They
I
can't,
can,
well, because they
could
can't
live on
separate
potatoes
it.
for the rest of my life. Like it doesn't. Yeah.
Hey, I used to go to a restaurant in Biloxi, Mississippi called Good Karma, and it
What?
was a vegan restaurant, and I used to go sit there and listen to Rumi.
I bet that was delicious.
And but they, you know what they would do is they would have they were kind of crazy a little bit because they would take stickers and go bring them to the supermarket and slap them on steaks.
Yeah, I'm okay with
Some
that.
of those crazies. That's a little bit too
Oh,
far
yeah,
from
that's
me, but
like the least crazy thing that I've seen vegans do. Like some of the stuff like that I've seen, I'm like, listen, there's a better way to connect with people. You know, like there was this lady that used to stand on the corner and she would scream, "Meat is murder." And she would scream at people like, "Ugh," and I'm like, and Jimmy at first he was like, "Please don't be her." And I was like, I'm literally not that girl. Like I'm all about leading by example and like, and I do that within my family and like all of that. I'm like, there's better ways to talk to people. There's better ways to change. Even if it's just a little bit, like there's a better way than screaming at people is not the way. Like little stickers and stuff, I don't care. But like putting that kind of energy out on people, that's exactly what I'm trying not to. Like to me, that's just as, I don't know, you're invading.
You're still adding a negative connotation
it's still
to
freaking
the
negative
idea.
So
Exactly.
So yeah, but like some of the like that, like putting stickers on stuff that like I'm okay with that. I think it's funny, like because most people are gonna buy it anyway. They don't care. They didn't care to begin with, so they're not, you know. But some people look at the sticker and really like take a minute to think, like, oh, okay, maybe it is weird that I'm buying a corpse. I don't know, but like, but yeah. I bet that restaurant was delicious.
oh, it was awesome.
Oh, I bet. There's a restaurant in California. What was it called? I don't remember, but they were only open at like you could get lunch at like 11. It was like they were open from like 11 to 3:33. Or you could get dinner at like 5:55 to like whatever time, you know, like they had these funny times. And then like half the restaurant was raw. And so like it literally had a wall and you could go to the raw side and everything over there was raw. So you could get the whole raw like meal. And then they had like just the vegan side. It was really interesting restaurant, but all the food was like amazing, like amazingly delicious.
Yeah, they're good at what they do for sure.
Yeah, and
you
the people
be
were
good and make stuff taste good when you're not.
The people were super kind too. I was like, all right, I like this. Like, yeah.
I did that whole vegetarian. I've been on and off on that for a couple of years, for a few years.
I did vegetarianism on and off for a while, and then I don't know. One day I just found that I wasn't eating any of those products, and I was just like, oh, look at that, and I was like, okay, but yeah, like when I first decided to do it, it's because my body was hurting. I was having a lot of like pain and like physical problems, and the doctors wouldn't help me. They just kept saying, well, take this and take that. You need to take this pill. And I'm like, I don't want to take pills. I'm 35. Now I'm 43. But at the time I was 35 and I was like, yeah, I feel like that's not going to help me. Like that's going to make it worse. But they wouldn't help me. So I just started doing my own research, and I found a lot of like science on like how animal products create a lot of inflammation in the body and like all those different things. And then of course you have like cholesterol and like all those different things. So for me, it started out like very science, like medical based. And then as I got farther into it, it turned into very much more like ethical and moral. So as I entered into that journey, it just evolved into. So I always tell people, like, I started off like for myself, like, you know, and then I stayed for the animals. So, which it's never been a problem for me. I've never, because people are like, don't you miss this or that? I'm like, I've never actually missed any of the foods that were any of those products. So I I don't know. It's pretty easy. Like quitting smoking cigarettes was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like not eating animals is easy for me. It's super easy. I don't even think about it. So, but yeah.
That's like anything else. I think so too. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. I
I
don't
did
know,
it to do it. I wanted to prove to myself that I could just not
you
eat.
just do it.
Yeah, I
like-
just want now I just do. I don't call it anything. I don't have a name for any. I'm eating whatever's seems whatever's around or whatever.
You eat to sustain
I'm
life.
just grazing. I'm just
Yeah.
grazing on whatever's within reach is getting eaten. I hope you don't have a dog. That's funny.
No, I don't actually. But no, we're gonna get some goats and chickens and stuff out here though. And
Nice.
rabbits and stuff. What else? Do you want me to shut the recording off? You want to?
Yeah, we're probably done with
Yeah.
the book part, right?
Yeah.
For today.